One of the important things for all of us is emotional intelligence. So how many of you all have heard of emotional intelligence before? Yeah. Oh, I feel like there's been a conversation recently. Emotional intelligence is two parts, but it's got different components. So emotional intelligence is self-awareness, how you come into an environment, to a room, how you impact things around you, your own self-control, and so how you respond to what's going on around you. And then there's awareness of others. That empathy piece, we've heard empathy a couple times. We saw it on the screen. So we have empathy, and then also how we build relationships is really important. So those are all components of emotional intelligence. It's not just about me, it's about we, and how we do that with each other. We're gonna go to another Mentimeter. How do you rate your own emotional intelligence, knowing it's about you and how you control yourself, and then also how you build relationships and impact other people? There's a few of you that got it. Maybe you guys had a conversation with Coach, it looks like, about emotional intelligence. I know for me, I'm in the pretty confident about it, but always need some work, and then needs some work. So thank you. Hannah, we'll start with you. How are you at handling your emotions and your impact on others, and what do you do?
This is kind of funny for me because I think I'm very competitive when it comes to the game, and I think I definitely allow my emotions to get the best of me, and I let a play consume me if I were to make a mistake. And I think in the beginning of the year, like when I started college as a freshman, I think I would definitely take it out on my teammates a lot. And it was really hard for me to, go back to what I was saying in that earlier question, like understand that I can't respond like that because, one, people are watching me, but two, like your teammates feed off of your energy. So I think having the emotional intelligence, whether it be in that game setting or in a work setting, you have to understand that people are watching your reaction and whether or not, you're going to fail or you're going to respond back with positivity or, how are you going to combat that? So I think for me, I definitely still have a lot to work on in regards to that, but I definitely think I've come a long way with allowing myself to understand that other people and where they're coming from and how they respond to me as well.
Great.
Your degree, your IQ might get you in the door for a job, but your EQ, your emotional intelligence is going to be what's going to promote you and help you connect with people. And, every team has their cliques, every team has their drama, and, I lead with the idea that the score takes care of itself. We'll teach the technique, we'll teach the X's and O's, but it's building humans rather than building athletes. That's the focus. And I think when you can help build emotional intelligence, it not only sets up your team to be successful later in life, but it also eliminates a lot of the issues that come up during a regular season of playing time and just this reality of the bigger picture and how others are feeling in a moment and how someone might feel just as strongly as you do, and you might disagree, and sometimes we have to agree to disagree, but all the while we're teaching this idea of having your own opinions, reflecting on your own emotions. Journaling is huge, in my opinion, for building emotional intelligence. When you reflect and you're not worried about your grammar, you're not worried about people seeing what you're writing, more things are coming out than you even know. And so emotional intelligence is key to success on the scoreboard and off the field.
IQ is what you have. It cannot be grown and learned, but EQ can be grown and learned. And that's what I love so much about EQ, because it really is what takes you to that next level of success. So, Stan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to be very brief on this one. Emotional intelligence, I don't have any anymore. I'm old enough to where I've been through a lot. I do want to add a new word to it, though. Instead of just emotional intelligence, there's also emotional patience. We have to be patient around this subject matter. Because we're quick to judge, we're quick to do a lot of things, and a lot of us don't have patience. I've been taught and come from an era of delayed gratification, and most of you as young individuals have come from an era of immediate gratification. And so we have to learn to be patient around each other, so the emotional patience that we have will help us build this sense of belonging, help us build this sense of inclusion, and we've got to understand each other and be patient with each other.
So when you think about unconscious bias at times, this can be a difficult conversation to have with people. How do you focus on this in the workplace and as we all grow as professionals?
I do this for a living. I conduct diversity workshops, education a lot of times, and that's one of the toughest subjects to deal with is the unconscious bias. But let me give you a kind of an example of what I'm talking about. People have a bias toward the younger generation. They say the young people's value systems are not good. And I say to them, they're wrong. Nothing wrong with your value systems. You value family, you value friendships, you value education, you value all the same things that I value. It's just that we were born at a different time. As I said, I've been taught delayed gratification, you've been taught instant or immediate gratification. And that's the way you create that, getting rid of the biases that you don't bring anything. I hear people often say, how do we work with millennials? No, I say, how do we work across the generations and help people be successful at all levels? And so I think you have to have those kind of conversations where people are open enough to say, I understand that I have some biases against young people because I think they're in a hurry, but that's an unconscious bias that I have. So you as young people say, I wish these old people get out of the way and let us do our thing. You know, that's a part of what we all bring to the table. And again, understanding that and saying that our value systems are the same, but we equate values with being who we are all the time. And that's not what we should be. We should be equating bringing, what do you bring with those values and how do we use those values to be able to help us all be successful.
Yeah, I love that. Coach, I'm going to stay on this just for a second because we were talking right before this, and we were talking about unconscious bias, and I was sharing with you, there was a time when I was being introduced as Dr. Ervin, and the speaker on the stage turned to my husband and tried to push my husband on stage, and he's like, no, it's her. And you were sharing a story. We don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this was actually on a podcast, so I'm sure it's Muffet McGraw. If anyone knows who Muffet McGraw, she's one of the best women's basketball coaches in general. I'm not even going to say women. That's a bias right there. But she was talking about going to the Final Four as a coach that has won multiple national championships, and on something in her room at the hotel, it said, "Welcome Matt McGraw," her husband. They just assumed he was the coach. And I think what's important to remember is that it goes both ways when it comes to our unconscious bias. And I want to tell you guys a story about my niece. So my niece, she's now 9, going on 35. It's crazy. Growing up, all she saw was my twin sister and I playing tackle football with other women in a women's league. And never once did I think I was not exposing her to the reality of the world. Until my sister and her, they were in the car and there were some little boys playing football and my sister pointed it out to Clara. They were driving and my sister said something about the boys playing football, and my niece stops her and said, "Boys don't play football." And she was completely serious. And so we have this idea in our mind because of society that, for example, a game like football, all the stereotypes that we think are, masculine, aggressive, assertive, everything we tie to men. But I didn't realize it could go the other way because she never saw a boy play football. Why would she think that? And so the things that we show on TV, they're making an impact on what we believe. And when she asked me, she said, "Now the Vikings, is that a boys team or a girls team?" I was a proud aunt when she asked that, because how innocent of a mind to believe that there's an opportunity like that for women as well. Hopefully one day we'll get there.
I love that. I'm going to throw in one more story and then we're going to ask Hannah. So Hannah, let's talk about being a part of a team. Trust is so important. How do you build trust with your teammates, and how do you handle it if trust is broken?
I think trust starts off with the ability to be able to be vulnerable. And I think a lot of times we don't want to be vulnerable because we want to put on this facade that, this mask that we're cooler than we are. And like the whole time we want to kind of uphold this mask, like this is who I am. I don't want anyone to see me another way. I don't want anyone to see me, crumble or fall. But I think having trust is the ability to put yourself out there. And I think it's hard sometimes. Like for me, I feel like I'm more of a trustful person, and I like to trust more than I often do. But a lot of people aren't like that. When they were younger, their trust was probably broken to them. And it's hard to often get to people like that because, why should they have a reason to trust you if their trust has been broken before? And I think ultimately trust is earned. And so you have to be able to be patient, like we were talking about that, emotional intelligence while being patient and understanding that it may take time for someone to open up to you, but they'll eventually get there. You just can't give up on those type of people. And in regards to breaking trust, I think if trust is broken, what we have to understand is that yourself, like when you self-reflect on who you are also not perfect. And there are things that you could have done better, whether, it's conflict, whether, it's falling out with someone, whether, it's between you and a coach or whoever it may be, that there's something that you could have done in the situation to also contribute to why that trust is broken. And to be able to have that self-reflection while also being vulnerable and being able to put yourself out there can allow for trust to grow within your team.
All right. So, Coach, let's talk a little bit about psychological safety because we talked about trust, but psychological safety is bigger than trust. It's about the whole team trusting each other and having a relationship. So, as a coach, how do you work to build psychological safety on your team?
When I got into coaching, I didn't realize that I should probably go get a social work degree, and it ends up that coaching is way less about X's and O's and more about mental health, and it really does come back to, in my opinion, it seems simple, but it comes back to being vulnerable and compassionate. And I think this idea of, knowing that we have our own imposter syndrome. I'm a huge believer that everyone has some sort of imposter syndrome, and we get so caught up in our own feelings that we fail to see the struggles of everyone else around us. And we'll do a activity with our team where we go around and we say one thing we're grateful for, then one thing that keeps us from being present. But the trick is that no one can respond. No one can say anything after. It takes off, this pressure of how to respond to someone in need and struggling. But it's led to open conversations, and it's opened up a lot of people who were never vulnerable before. And so doing things like that where you allow people to express the struggles that life really is. And we don't try to act like life is perfect, like this is going to be easy. The more we can stop showing people our highlight reels on social media, and the more we remember that these are highlight reels, we create an atmosphere that understands that the next person is struggling just as much as me, if not more. And we're all fighting a battle that no one can see, regardless of how rich someone might be, how famous. Everyone's fighting a battle, and having that in our culture and our, in our way of doing things every day, I hope creates that safe place.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Well, and we cannot end this conversation. I got one more question with you before we're done, but I want to talk a little bit about allyship. And allyship is so important. Because when we think about allies, we don't think that there's 7 different types of allies, and there are multiple different types of allies. So we have them up here. A sponsor ally really points out and gives credit to others. They're really highlighting other people and making sure that they get credit as well. We have the champion. A champion will gladly and proudly defer to someone else. They will look around the room and say, I can do it, but we need different voices, so we need to bring those people in as allies. We have the amplifier. Those amplifiers are the ones that say, we have not heard from this group, or that was a good point and I'm not sure everybody heard it. And so they're making sure that they really amplify the voice of others. We have the advocate, and an advocate tries to learn and listen as much as they can about underrepresented groups and making sure that they are taking what they learn and getting that out to the community. The scholar ally is one that tries to learn and listen about everything. Stan, any thoughts on allies? I know you probably have some thoughts.
A lot of thoughts on allies. One of the things is people have to understand that when most people hear the word ally, if they haven't educated themselves like this to understand that there are different levels, most people think of allies, they think also of, okay, that means I got somebody that's going to just be in my corner all the time. No, an ally doesn't necessarily have to be in your corner all the time. An ally is going to be able to talk and speak truth to you about certain things that they feel as well. I have a lot of different people think I work with the Minority Opportunities Athletic Association. They think that our organization is only for minority individuals. That's not true. It's for everyone. It's where whoever wants to be in a space where we can help individuals grow. That's what we do. So we have a number of white individuals that serve on our board, that serve in our committees, that are part of our process. So it's not just about thinking that your ally is going to be somebody of the opposite race from you. They can be or they cannot be. And so I think that's the key also, is to make sure that we understand that allies could be another different thing. I like to use the word champion rather than allies, because also there's a lot of people out here that think about allies. You think about fighting a war. And my allies are helping me to fight somebody. I don't want to fight with anybody. I want to help people be successful. So I like to use the word champions in this process as well, which that's a part of the word who can be a part of that allyship.
Okay. One last wrap-up question. I'm going to have you all answer it. When we think about this session and we think about belonging, how we started this session, at the core, it's building those strong relationships. How do you intentionally work on building relationships with your peers and other leaders around you?
I feel like to build those strong relationships and to be able to grow allies, that we need to be able to get to know each other more. And I really liked what Katie said about trying to get out of your highlight reel. And I think we should all get to know people's story. And the more that we get to know people's story and where they come from, we'll be able to understand something more about ourselves and relate to each other on a deeper level. And, at the end of the day, this goes beyond, the field, or, this goes beyond athletics as well. Like, we're trying to create, people in society in the NAIA to, be productive and be out in the world and actually, get to know each other and, come together as a community. And I feel like the more that we come in with these ideas of empathy, of being able to step in each other's shoes, of, being able to understand that, someone hasn't grown up the same way as you, and to really just relate and find something that you can come to on a common ground, is where we can build those relationships.
I love it. Coach?
I always like to say when you're we live in a divided world, very divided. And when you think about how you view what it is that you value, and if you're ever unsure in this very, very much divided world, err on the side of love. Because I know at the end of the day, when the time comes, I'd rather find out that I'm wrong for being too loving than find out I'm wrong for being too judgmental. None of us have the answers. And that's really has helped me to create a space that I feel allows people to be who they truly are. And so I always, I encourage people to use that measuring stick of when you're making decisions and you're trying to create an environment of belonging and you're trying to be an ally.
I want to add one thing. We talked about unconscious bias. One of the things that I think that I try to do right now is look at my conscious bias. I do have a lot of conscious biases, and I think you have to understand what those are as well. There's certain things that I just don't like, and I have to make sure that I am checking that when I come into a room or work with individuals, because those biases are there. They're going to come out. The second thing I think is important to me is that you have to build trust, and to build trust, you have to communicate. 70 to 80% of our problems are around communications, people not communicating well. And when we shut down, and you all know this, when you don't communicate, what happens to our productivity? it goes down. So if we're not communicating, think about that. If I'm not communicating or having open communications with you and talking about the things, the trust, the differences, the biases, and all of those things, then, and if I'm not aware, then I shut down and I stop. And we don't communicate, then our productivity. And we're all in the business here in athletics of being more productive. And so I come at this from a productivity standpoint. I don't come at this from the standpoint that it's the social thing for us to do. This is about helping us grow, helping us be successful. And if we can do that, then I think it will help all of us be successful.
Perfect. Well, that's a great way to wrap up. Thank you, everyone on the panel. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone at Ottawa. And the question we'll leave you with is really how are you creating belonging? How are you creating an environment for people to be able to come and be their true self? So thank you so much.